Here we are back at our blog style layout. In this video, I'm going to cover some review items such as floating list items, and we're also going to introduce a new concept which is absolute positioning. So what I have here, this is our final result, is I have list items that have been floated to the left to make them look horizontal, and I've given them a little bit of padding, and I've also styled the CSS so that on hover the background color changes and my text color changes from white to black. But the new element is that I've positioned them to be on the bottom right-hand side of my header. So that's what we're going to talk about that's new. So if I jump back over here to Dreamweaver, and I'm here at my blog style layout, the first thing I need to do is I need to add those list items. So I'm going to just type in tab 1, tab 2, tab 3, tab 4, and I'm just hitting the enter key in between so that each one is in their own paragraph tag. So if I go over to the code, you'll see that they're each wrapped in their own paragraph tag. Back over to design view, I'm going to go down to the properties inspector and click on my unordered list icon, and that's going to change them into unordered lists. And if I look in the code view, I can see that instead of p tags, they're now wrapped in the li tags, and the individual ones in the whole list of tags, the whole list, all the individual ones are wrapped in the ul tag. So these are tags within tags. I'm actually now going to make them all into links. So I'm going to highlight them and go into my link field, and I'll put in the hashtag, and that's how you can create the false link. So they'll take on the properties of a link without even actually going to another page. And this can be useful for wanting to be able to style your page before you get to that point of knowing, having your other pages ready where you're going to put in the links. So once you actually link these to an actual page, all the properties that you're going to assign to the link attribute will stay the same. So they've now taken on the default looks of a link. So I'm going to start styling them. And since this is in my header, I'm going to go up into my CSS rules, and I'm going to create these rules right after my header rule. So I have first the rule for my header that styles it, and then a compound selector for my H1. And so now I'm going to target, and let's think about this. We actually have 4 different levels we're going to target. This is all a UL, so that's one level. They are also individual list items, that's another level. And then they are all links as well. So that's a third level. So it's really 3 different levels. So each level has its own set of rules. To get rid of the bullets, I'm going to assign that to the UL. So I'm going to write a compound selector that's saying if you're in the header and you have the UL tag, have your list style type go to none. And close that out. And now when I click over here, that bullet is gone. All right. And now I'm going to write my next one that says, if you're in the header and you're within a UL tag and you have the LI tag wrapped around you, I want to float you to the left. I'm going to put float left. Oops, sorry. Chose the wrong one. Typing is bad today. Okay, and now when I click over here, they have now moved horizontally. And now I'm going to start to style them. So now I'm going to write a rule that says if you're in the header and you are UL with an LI tag and the A link, so A : link, I want your color to be what did I do on my final? Sorry, I'm just going to go back over here and reference what I had set up. Okay, so they're white. They're just white. And then I'll change them. So I want your color to be white. And let's just make sure that's working. So I click over here, and now they're white. And I also need to make their text decoration none to get rid of the underline. So I'm doing this all under the link. So why am I doing it under the link and not under the UL or the LI? Because the link attribute is the most specific attribute, or the most specific tag that targets this text. So as you can see, it took on immediately, as soon as I made it a link, the default styles of a link. So that's the one that is most specific. So if I think of a cascade coming down, of this as all as like a little waterfall, the one that is closest to this text is actually the A link. So that is the one that I want to assign all of the final styles of how this is going to look. So I also want to add some padding to the left and to the right. I'll add 5 pixels, and then I'll do another one down here. So to give them a little bit of space, and then I'll do the text decoration to none. Okay, and so now they're no longer underlined. So now we're ready for the next step, which is to change their positioning, and I'll just save this and preview it in the browser. So they're over here, and I want them to be over here. So let's go back over to Dreamweaver, and I'm going to change their positioning. So I'm changing the whole UL, not just the individual list items, but I'm going to change the whole UL. So I'm going to go up to that rule that says, hey, if you are in the header and you are UL, and currently the only style I have there is list style type none, I'm going to change it to have a position of absolute. So an absolute position allows me to put in hard-coded numbers like 0 or 5, and it's going to set the top of that to that position. So I'm going to give it a position of absolute, and now I'm going to position it. I'm going to say I want it to be at the bottom at 0 pixels, and the right at 0 pixels as well. Because what I want is for it to be at the bottom over here. I want it to be at the bottom, and I want it to be at the right at 0 pixels. I want it to be down here. So let's save this and see if it happened. And they're down here. So they are at 0 bottom and 0 right, but not of my header, of the entire page. So whenever I work with absolute positioning, I have to tell the browser that the positioning numbers that I just put in, bottom right and 0 right, are for which one of my divs. And if I don't specify for a specific div, then it's just going to put it to the entire page. So the way I specify the div is I'm going to give the div that my element that I'm setting the absolute positioning to, the div that it's inside, I'm going to give it a different positioning called relative. So this whole area that I'm going to set to absolute positioning, which has kind of disappeared on my screen here, but it's my tabs. They're actually down here. My tabs have absolute positioning inside of my header. So I'm going to go over to my header, just the regular header rule, my first one over here, and I'm going to give this a positioning of relative. That's definitely not spelled right. So my header has a positioning of relative. My UL, the unordered list that's inside the header, has a positioning of absolute of bottom 0 and right 0. And so it's now going to assign it to whatever is the closest relative, which is the header. So now when I save it and preview, it now shows up here. It's not exactly in the right position yet, but we're going to work on that. It's a lot better than being down here. So again, in summary, if I wanted to use absolute position for one of my images inside my main, so I would give it position absolute and then say position bottom 0, right 0 if I wanted this to be down here. And this is a hard-coded number. It's a fixed number, so it's not going to move around. But to get it to be here, I have to set the position of the div that this is in to relative. So I set my UL to be absolute positioned, and I set it to bottom 0 and right 0, but I set the div that it's in, which is the header, to position relative. Okay, now, why isn't it going down here? Well, if we look back at our rules, and I look at my header, I can see that I had earlier given my header a padding of bottom 20 pixels. So I need to take that out because that's overriding what the effect that I want. I want to get my tabs all the way to the bottom. And now if I save this and preview, okay, so I have a little bit of a situation here, which is this is floated to the left, and it's really with my it's still not all the way down to the bottom, and now my paragraph text is all the way down to the bottom because I got rid of my padding. The padding is what allowed me to have some space below my paragraph and the end of my my div here. So the runaround for that is going to be that I'm going to write another rule that's going to target my paragraph. I'm saying if you're in the header and you're a paragraph, put the padding of bottom there. And I'll put the padding, let's say 50 px. And something, oh, I took away my closed one from there. All right. So now let's preview it. Okay, so that's a little bit better. So now the way I got this back, I had to, eventually I'm going to get this tab to be all the way down here. If we look back in some of the earlier ones, I don't know how many times I've opened this up. There we go. This is the way, remember, we want it to look ultimately. We want my tabs to be all the way down there. We want to be able to have space. So as we've seen the progression of what's happening, first I had my tabs here, which was great, but as soon as I use the absolute positioning, put them over there, well, here they're flipped down there, and now they're here, and I get rid of that padding to be able to get them down here, and it shrinks up my text. So now I've added the padding to the bottom of my paragraph, and now why aren't these going to the bottom yet? Well, the reason is because I have to strip out the padding and the margins to the other properties that are involved in this tab. And the other properties that are involved are the UL and the LI. So I'm going to go to starting with everything else that is involved. So remember I said these tabs work on 3 levels. They are unordered lists, they are list items, and they are also ultimately a link. So in my UL, I'm going to put padding bottom 0 px, and I'm going to also just put out margin as well. So margin bottom 0 px as well, just to get rid of any default padding and margins that are being assigned to anything except for the link. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm also going to put it over here as well. Let's save it and see if we're getting a change yet. And so now we have it down here at the bottom. So these tabs are a little bit more complicated than they look. Just as a review, they are ULs, they are LIs, and they are links. So to get them to go all the way down there, that last step I did was just to strip the default padding and margins within these other tags, the UL and the LI, and put them down to 0. And so now the goal is strip away all the defaults from every other level, and then just do all of the styling within the last level, the one that is the most specific, which is the A link. So now the next thing I want to do actually is just simply create the A hover. So I do need to create all 4 states, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to create the A hover state. So we have that done, A hover, and what I want to say is when you hover over, I want to change the background color to white and regular text color to black. I'm going to save it and preview. So now, oh, not working. Let's see what happened. So I said when we're over all of these, oh, let's see, I misspelled header. I wrote header. So header. Okay, now save it and preview. And so when I go over the tab, the background turns white and the color turns black. And I could continue to tweak this. I could add some more padding to the left and to the right of each one of these individual links to be able to give them some more space. I could also add some margins as well. All right, so in the next video, I'm going to continue, but we're going to work with the images. We're going to continue working with the idea of absolute